The war between humans and vampires had lasted for many years. It began with fear and misunderstanding, and grew into hatred that filled every battlefield with loss. But one man, a human warrior named Elias, had always believed that not all creatures were evil, even if the world said otherwise. Elias was brave, strong, and loyal. He had fought in every major battle since he was 18. His eyes were calm but full of quiet sadness, a sadness that came from seeing too many lives lost. For him, war was never about glory. It was about survival and protecting innocent people. When the final war between humans and vampires came, Elias was among the frontline commanders. The vampires were powerful, fast, and mysterious, but Elias was clever. He learned their tactics, studied their moves, and waited for the perfect time to strike. After months of fighting, the humans finally defeated the vampire army. Their ancient queen surrendered, tired of losing her people. As part of the peace agreement, the vampire clan was forced to give up their lands, weapons, and several noble members as tribute to the victors. Most humans saw it as justice, but Elias did not celebrate. He stood quietly as other soldiers shouted in joy. For him, victory felt heavy. The king of the human kingdom, proud of his army's success, wanted to reward his bravest men. During the ceremony, gold, titles, and lands were given to the commanders. When Elias's name was called, the king said something unexpected. "For your courage and wisdom in battle, I offer you a gift like no other." The king announced, "Among the captured vampires there is one of rare beauty and grace. Her name is Selene. She was once a noble among her kind. From this day she shall belong to you as your reward." The court fell silent. Many whispered in shock and envy. A vampire woman as a reward? It sounded strange and dangerous. But Elias didn't speak. He simply bowed his head and accepted, though his heart was filled with confusion. Later that night, when he was taken to meet her, Elias found himself in front of a quiet, graceful figure. Selene stood in the dim torchlight, her pale face calm, her eyes glowing faintly like moonlight. She wore a simple gown of gray cloth, far different from the royal robes she once had. Yet even in that moment there was dignity in her posture. Elias looked at her not as a prize but as a person. "Do you know why you are here?" he asked softly. Selene nodded slowly. "Because your king believes I am something that can be given away," she replied, her voice calm but edged with sorrow. Elias sighed. "I did not ask for this," he said. "But I will not treat you as a thing. You will be safe with me." Selene looked up for the first time, studying his face. His eyes were tired, not cruel. For the first time since her capture, she felt a small flicker of peace. Days passed. Elias did not keep her in chains or treat her as a servant. He gave her a small room in his home and allowed her freedom within the walls. The people of the village whispered about the strange woman who lived with their hero. Some were curious, others were fearful, but Elias ignored them. Selene spent her days in silence, helping in small ways, feeding the horses, tending the garden, reading old books in the corner of the library. She spoke little, but Elias could sense her loneliness. One evening he found her standing near the window staring at the setting sun. "You miss your home," he said quietly. She nodded. "Yes, but I think what I miss most is being treated as someone with a heart." Elias hesitated, then said, "You still have one, even if the world refuses to see it." From that moment, something began to change. They spoke more often about peace, about their worlds, about the meaning of life. Elias learned that Selene was not a monster, but a being who loved art, music, and nature. She had once tried to make peace between humans and vampires before the war destroyed everything. As the days turned into weeks, the distance between them grew smaller. Elias found himself smiling more when she was around. He didn't understand why, but her presence made his house feel alive again. But not everyone was happy. The soldiers who once fought beside him began to whisper that he had gone soft. "He's living with a vampire," one of them said. "What if she's only waiting to betray him?" Elias ignored their warnings, but inside he worried. He knew what others saw, a man keeping a vampire under his roof. But to him, Selene was more than that. She was gentle, wise, and brave in her own quiet way. One night during a storm, Selene came to him. She looked frightened for the first time. "Elias," she said, "I heard the villagers. They say the king's men might come. They think I'm dangerous." Elias stood and looked into her eyes. "Let them come," he said firmly. "They will not harm you. You are under my protection. Selene looked at him for a long moment, and something unspoken passed between them. She realized he was not like other humans. He saw her not as a creature but as a soul. That night, when the thunder echoed outside, they sat by the fire in silence. The war had ended, but in that small house, another quiet battle was beginning. The battle between fear and trust, between two hearts that came from different worlds. For the first time since the war, Selena felt hope. And for the first time in years, Elias felt peace. Neither of them knew that their story was only beginning. Weeks turned into months, and the uneasy peace between humans and vampires continued. Villages began to rebuild, soldiers returned home, and the world slowly tried to forget the years of bloodshed. But in one quiet corner of the kingdom, in a small stone house near the forest, an unusual friendship was growing stronger every day. Elias and Selene lived quietly, away from the noise of politics and war. Their lives followed a calm routine. In the mornings, Elias would train in the courtyard or tend to his horses, while Selene would read or work in the garden. Sometimes they shared meals in silence, and other times they talked about the stars, the meaning of peace, and the strange ways of the human heart. Elias had once been known as a fierce warrior, but around Selene his strength softened. He began to laugh again, though softly, like a man who had forgotten how. He noticed how she smiled when the morning sun touched the flowers, and how her voice carried calmness even when she said very little. Selene, on her part, had started to see humanity differently. Before her capture, she believed humans were cruel and greedy, always hungry for power. But Elias's kindness confused her. He never raised his voice, never treated her as less. His respect made her feel like a person again. One afternoon, while Elias was fixing a broken fence, Selena brought him a jug of cool water. He looked at her and smiled. "Thank you," he said, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "You work too hard," she replied. "You could rest for a while," Elias chuckled. "If I rest too much, I will forget how to live. Work keeps my hands busy and my mind quiet." Selene tilted her head slightly. "And what keeps your heart quiet?" Elias paused for a moment before saying, "Perhaps kindness. It reminds me that not everything in this world is lost." Their eyes met, and for a brief second the air felt still. Neither spoke again, but both knew something had changed. As the days passed, whispers about their companionship reached the nearby towns. Some people said Elias had fallen under a spell. Others claimed that Selene was no longer dangerous, that perhaps she had changed. But no one really knew what happened inside the small stone house where a vampire and a human learned to live side by side. One evening, the local priest came to visit. He was a kind man, though cautious. He sat with Elias by the fireplace and spoke softly. "You have done great service for our kingdom, my son," he said. "But people talk. They do not understand why you keep that woman here. It may bring trouble." Elias listened quietly. "She has done no harm," he said. "She deserves peace just like anyone else." The priest nodded slowly. "Peace is a gift, Elias, but it is also fragile. Be careful that your compassion does not turn into danger." Elias understood the warning but said nothing more. After the priest left, Selene came out from the kitchen, her face thoughtful. "He fears me," she said softly. "He fears what he doesn't know," Elias replied. "Most people do." Selene looked down at her hands. "Sometimes I fear myself too. I am not like you, Elias. My world was built on darkness and pride. I do not belong here." Elias walked closer and said gently, "You belong wherever kindness is allowed to exist. And as long as you are here, you belong." Her eyes glistened, but she said nothing. That night, as the moonlight poured through the window, she watched Elias fall asleep by the fire, and for the first time, she smiled to herself, not out of pride or sorrow, but out of quiet gratitude. Days later, the peace between humans and vampires began to tremble again. Rumors spread that a group of rogue vampires refused to accept defeat and were hiding near the northern mountains. The king began to fear another uprising and sent messengers to call back the warriors. Elias received the order one morning. Selene saw the letter in his hand and knew what it meant. "You're going to fight again," she said softly. Elias nodded. "The king has called for me. I cannot refuse," she lowered her eyes. "And if they see me here when you are gone?" He looked at her seriously. "Then you must stay hidden. People are still afraid." Promise me you won't leave the house. Celine hesitated but finally said, I promise. The day he left, the air felt heavy. Celine stood at the doorway watching as he rode away on his horse. She had seen many soldiers leave for war before, but this time felt different. Her heart felt strange, like something precious was being taken away. Elias's journey took him far to the northern border. There he found the land covered in mist and snow. He fought not with anger but with duty, leading his men with fairness and courage. But even in battle he thought of the quiet house, the garden, and the woman who waited by the window. Back at home, Celine kept her promise. She stayed hidden, lighting a small candle every night as a prayer for his safety. She tended the house, cared for the horses, and waited for the sound of his footsteps. Each night she stood near the window and whispered into the darkness, Come back safe, Elias. After many weeks, Elias finally returned. His armor was scratched, his face tired, but his eyes were bright when he saw her waiting at the gate. Celine ran to him, not thinking of pride or fear. She stopped a few steps away, her voice trembling. You're safe, Elias smiled faintly. I kept my promise. They stood there for a long time, neither speaking, both understanding the silence that surrounded them. Something deep and pure had grown between them, not built on power or blood, but on trust. Later that night, when the stars filled the sky, Elias sat by the fire and said softly, Celine, the king offered me gold for my service again. But I refused. She looked at him curiously. Why? He turned toward her and said, Because I already have what I value most. Her eyes widened slightly. And what is that? Elias smiled gently. Peace. And the person who helped me find it. Celine felt her heart grow warm. For centuries she had been feared, hunted, and hated. But here, in this small house with a human warrior, she had found something she never believed possible. Acceptance. That night, as the wind whispered through the trees, both of them sat in silence, knowing that their connection was something the world would never fully understand. And yet in their hearts it felt right. Peace returned to the kingdom once more. The soldiers came home and the people tried to rebuild their lives again. But for Elias, the war had changed something inside him. He no longer dreamed of battles or honor. His heart longed only for quiet days, for the sound of the wind through the trees, and for the peaceful company of Celine. Life slowly settled into a gentle rhythm. Each morning, Celine would open the windows to let the sunlight in, even though her kind had once feared it. She had learned to enjoy the warmth on her face. Elias would sit outside sharpening his sword, though he rarely used it now. Sometimes they would share simple meals in silence, but it was a silence filled with understanding. One evening, as they walked through the forest near their home, Celine said softly, You have given up much for peace. Don't you miss the life you had before? Elias smiled faintly. I do not miss the war. I miss the friends I lost, but I am glad I no longer have to fight. Peace is worth every sacrifice. Celine looked down at her hands. And what if peace never lasts? What if the world finds another reason to destroy itself? Elias stopped walking and turned to her. Then I will still choose kindness even if the world does not. She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled gently. You are strange for a human, she said. And you are kind for a vampire, he replied. They both laughed quietly. As weeks passed, they began to rely on each other more deeply. Elias grew used to hearing her voice in the evenings, to her quiet footsteps around the house, to the way she hummed softly when she thought no one was listening. Celine, too, began to feel something she had not felt for centuries. Comfort. But peace rarely lasts without being tested. One morning, a royal messenger arrived at their home. He brought a sealed letter from the king. Elias broke the seal and read it in silence. Celine watched his expression change from calm to concern. What is it? She asked softly. The king is calling me back to the capital, Elias said. He wants to see me, Celine frowned. After all this time? Yes, he says there are rumors spreading, rumors about me keeping company with a vampire. He wants to question me. Celine's face turned pale. You mean they found out? Elias nodded. It seems so. For the first time in months, fear filled the quiet house. Elias packed his things, but Celine could see the worry in his eyes. You don't have to go, she said, stepping closer. You could stay hidden here. He shook his head firmly. If I run, they will think you have controlled me. I cannot let them use that lie to harm you. I must face them. Celine wanted to protest but said nothing. She simply whispered, "Then promise me you will come back." "I promise," he said quietly. The next morning, Elias rode away once again. Celine stood at the gate, watching until he disappeared over the hill. She felt as if the sun had dimmed the moment he was gone. At the capital, Elias was brought before the king and his council. The king looked at him with a mixture of respect and doubt. "Elias," he said, "you have served me well. You brought peace to our land. But people are talking. They say you live with one of the enemy, a vampire. Is it true?" Elias did not lie. "Yes, your majesty, it is true. She was given to me as a reward, but I have not treated her as property. She is peaceful and means no harm." The council members murmured among themselves. One of them said sharply, "How can you trust a creature that once fought against us? What if she turns on you?" Elias stood tall and replied, "If peace is only for those who look like us, then it is not peace at all. I have seen her kindness, her patience, and her heart. She is not our enemy." The room fell silent. The king leaned forward, studying him. "You speak as though you care for her." Elias met his gaze. "I do. She has shown me what true peace means." The king sighed. "Elias, you are a good man, but the people fear what they do not understand. I cannot stop their whispers. For your safety and hers, perhaps you should send her away, far from the kingdom." Elias's heart tightened. "No," he said simply. "I gave her my word. I will protect her." The king looked at him sadly. "Then I pray your faith will not destroy you." After the meeting, Elias returned home with heavy thoughts. He found Celine waiting by the door, her eyes filled with relief when she saw him. "You kept your promise," she said softly. "I always will," he replied. They sat by the fire that night, the flames flickering gently between them. Elias told her everything, the king's warning, the council's doubts, and the fear spreading through the towns. Celine listened in silence, her face calm but her eyes distant. After a long pause, she said quietly, "Perhaps I should leave. If I go far away, they will forget. You will be safe." Elias shook his head. "No, you belong here. This is your home now." "But what if your people turn against you?" she asked. "Then I will stand with you," he said firmly, "because what we have built is worth protecting." Celine looked at him with quiet emotion. She had lived for centuries, seen empires rise and fall, but never had she met someone who valued peace more than power. For the first time, she realized what true courage looked like, not the courage to fight, but the courage to forgive. That night, as the moonlight touched their faces, a soft calm filled the room. Neither of them spoke, but both understood that their bond had become something unbreakable. The next morning, the villagers began to gossip more openly. Some said Elias had lost his mind, others said he was cursed, but there were also a few who whispered something new, something gentler. They said perhaps the warrior and the vampire had found a better way to live. The days after Elias's return were quiet but not peaceful. The whispers from the village grew louder. People began avoiding his house, pulling their children closer whenever Celine walked by. She noticed their stares, the way doors closed as she passed, and though she tried to ignore it, the sadness in her heart grew heavier each day. Elias noticed it too. He could see how the world still feared what it did not understand. He tried to comfort her, telling her that time would change things, that people would learn to trust again. But deep down he knew it was not that simple. Fear was a stubborn shadow. One afternoon, as Elias repaired a broken fence outside, 2 soldiers from the capital arrived. They bowed politely, but their faces were serious. "Sir Elias," one of them said, "the king has ordered you to report back to the city. There have been more rumors, and he wishes to speak with you again." Elias frowned. "Is this about Celine?" The soldier hesitated. "Yes, sir. Some say she is not to be trusted. The council is worried." Celine came out of the house quietly, her silver eyes calm but alert. "They fear me again," she said softly. "Perhaps I should not have stayed." Elias looked at her and said, "You did nothing wrong. Do not blame yourself." That evening, before he left, Elias sat with her by the fire. The flames danced softly, painting their faces in gold. "I must go," he said, "but I will come back. No matter what they say, I will not abandon you." Celine lowered her gaze. "You always keep your word," she whispered. The next morning, Elias rode toward the capital once again. The road was long and silent. Along the way, He thought of everything that had happened, how a war meant to bring peace had only replaced one kind of fear with another. He wondered if humans and vampires would ever truly understand each other. At the capital, the king greeted him with kindness but concern. "Elias," he said, "I know your heart is pure, but the people's fear grows each day. Some even say the strange peace between us and the vampires is cursed." "They will not listen to reason," Elias bowed. "Then I will speak to them myself, your majesty. Let me show them that peace is not a curse." The king looked doubtful. "Words may not be enough." "Then I will show them through my life," Elias said firmly. The king sighed, knowing the man's heart could not be changed. "Very well," he said, "but be careful. Not everyone values peace as you do." Elias returned home after several days. The moment Celine saw him, her face brightened like morning light. "You are safe," she said. "I told you I would be," he replied. But things were different now. The villagers began watching them closely. Some followed Elias when he went to the market, whispering about how he had been enchanted. Others claimed that Celine brought strange luck. Crops near his land grew better, animals healed faster. Some called it blessing. Others called it witchcraft. One night, as they sat outside watching the stars, Celine said quietly, "Do you ever regret accepting me as your reward?" Elias looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said softly. "You were never a reward. You were the only thing that made this peace real." She smiled faintly, but her eyes were sad. "You speak like a poet," she said. He chuckled. "Maybe peace makes poets out of soldiers." The days passed slowly. The king, hearing more gossip, sent word that Elias should be careful. Some of the people were planning to come and demand that Celine be sent away. When Elias told her, Celine was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Perhaps I should leave before they arrive. I do not want them to harm you." Elias shook his head. "If they come, we will face them together. I will not hide you, Celine, but they will not understand," she said. "They never do." He took a deep breath. "Then they will learn from us, not through war or fear, but through patience." A few days later, as the sun began to set, a small group of villagers gathered outside their home. They were not angry, only confused and afraid. The leader, an old man, stepped forward. "Sir Elias," he said, "we do not mean harm, but the people are afraid. They say the woman you live with is not one of us." "We fear what might happen." Elias stood calmly. "She has harmed no one," he said. "You have all seen that. She helps with the garden, she tends to the animals, she speaks kindly to all. What is there to fear?" The old man looked at Celine. "Because she is different," he said simply. Celine stepped forward gently. "Yes," she said, "I am different, but I am not your enemy. I once lived in darkness, believing humans were cruel, but Elias showed me that kindness still exists. I ask for nothing but peace." The crowd grew quiet. They looked at her, seeing not a creature of myth but a woman standing with quiet grace. The old man nodded slowly. "Perhaps fear makes us blind," he said softly. "We will not harm you." That night, after the crowd left, Elias looked at Celine with pride. "You spoke with courage," he said. Celine smiled faintly. "Maybe your bravery has begun to influence me." For a few weeks, peace truly settled around them. The villagers stopped avoiding their home. Children waved to Elias again when he passed through town, and though some still whispered, the fear began to fade. But deep inside, Celine knew peace was always fragile. She had lived too long to believe it would last forever. One night, as the moonlight shone through the window, she whispered softly, "If the world tries to tear this peace away, what will you do, Elias?" He looked at her and said simply, "Then I will hold on tighter. Because peace is not something we wait for, it's something we fight to keep." Celine looked at him, her heart calm yet full. For the first time in centuries, she believed that maybe peace between their kinds was possible, not through kings or wars, but through hearts that refused to hate. And in that quiet house by the forest, two souls, one human and one vampire, proved that sometimes love was not born of similarity but of understanding. They did not know what the future would bring. But for that night, as the wind sang softly through the trees, they felt that peace had truly found a home. Part 5 seasons changed, and with each passing day, the world around Elias and Celine grew quieter, calmer, and more forgiving. The villagers had begun to accept Celine fully, not as a stranger or a threat, but as part of their small community. Children laughed near the garden she tended, and neighbors stopped whispering behind closed doors. Slowly, the fear that had once followed them faded, replaced by a tentative respect. Elias watched all of this with quiet pride. For months, he had fought not with swords but with patience, showing others that kindness and trust could bridge the gap between two worlds. But even as the peace settled, Elias knew there was still more to be done. True acceptance did not come easily, and the past could never be forgotten. One sunny morning, Selene joined him in the courtyard, carrying a basket of freshly picked herbs. "Elias," she said softly, "I have been thinking. We have built something beautiful here, but I do not want to live in hiding anymore. I want the world to know that we can live together, human and vampire, without fear." Elias looked at her, surprised and moved. "Are you ready for that?" he asked. Selene nodded firmly. "Yes, I have waited centuries for peace. I will not let fear take it from us." That evening, they went to the village together. Selene walked beside Elias, her head held high. At first, some villagers hesitated, unsure how to react. But Elias took her hand, showing them that there was no danger, only trust. Slowly, one by one, people came closer, offering greetings and even smiles. An elderly woman stepped forward. "We were wrong to fear you," she said gently. "You have shown patience and kindness. Perhaps we can learn to live differently too." Selene's lips curved into a gentle smile. "Thank you," she said. "It is never too late to choose understanding." As the months passed, Elias and Selene continued their work in the village. They helped rebuild homes, taught children to care for the animals, and encouraged harmony between humans and the few vampire families that remained. Word of their peace spread quietly through the kingdom. Slowly, even the king began to see the change. One day, a royal messenger arrived. The king himself requested an audience with Elias and Selene. They traveled together to the capital, a journey filled with hope and quiet anticipation. At the palace, the king greeted them warmly. "Elias, Selene," he said, "I have watched what you have done. You have shown the people that fear can be overcome by understanding. You have brought hope to the kingdom." Selene bowed gracefully. "It is not only our work, Your Majesty. It is the courage of the villagers to accept change that has made this possible." The king smiled. "And yet it is rare that one pair can teach the many. I wish to honor you both, not with gold or titles, but with a choice. Would you accept the responsibility to help guide peace throughout the kingdom?" Elias looked at Selene. She nodded, her eyes shining with quiet determination. Together they turned back to the king. "We accept," Elias said. In the following years, Elias and Selene became symbols of unity and trust. Their home remained a small sanctuary near the forest, but their work reached far beyond its walls. The kingdom slowly learned that humans and vampires could live side by side, each respecting the other's strengths and differences. Despite the public recognition, Elias and Selene never let fame change them. They still walked quietly in the forest, tended the garden together, and shared simple meals by the fire. But now there was a deeper peace in their hearts, a sense that the world, while imperfect, could change for the better. One evening, under a sky painted with the colors of sunset, Elias took Selene's hand. "You have been my teacher," he said softly. "You taught me patience, understanding, and courage in ways that no battle ever could." Selene smiled, her eyes reflecting the glow of the horizon. "And you taught me hope," she replied. "You showed me that even in a world filled with fear, love and trust can still exist." Elias looked around the peaceful village, then back at her. "I think it is time," he said, "to make our bond known in the most important way." Selene tilted her head, curious. Elias knelt on one knee, holding her hand gently. "Selene, you have changed my life. You have shown me what it truly means to live. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Selene's eyes, not from sadness but from joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Elias, I will marry you." News of their marriage spread quickly, but instead of fear or anger, the people were inspired. A celebration was held in the village, not for a warrior or a vampire, but for the courage it took to trust and love beyond differences. Children laughed, adults cheered, and even the oldest villagers smiled, seeing the hope that had returned to their lives. As they stood together under the gentle light of the evening sky, hand in hand, Elias and Selene realized that their journey had not just been about surviving or winning battles. It had been about building a world where understanding mattered more than fear, and where love could heal even centuries of distrust. In the years that followed, their life together continued quietly but meaningfully. They raised children who learned to value kindness above strength and understanding above prejudice. Their home became a place where humans and vampires could meet without fear, a sanctuary of trust and learning. Though the world was never perfect, Elias and Selene proved that one pair of hearts could change it, if only they were brave enough to choose compassion over fear. And in the quiet of their small home near the forest, as the wind whispered through the trees and the moon rose high in the sky, Elias looked at Selene and said softly, "We did it. We found peace." Selene smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Yes," she said. "And it all began when we chose to trust each other." The stars shone above, and for the first time in centuries, a vampire and a human knew that their love was more powerful than fear, stronger than prejudice, and more enduring than time itself. In that moment, the world felt whole, and two hearts that once belonged to different worlds beat as one.